Alright, here we go. I'm still alive. A little congested yet. Still some honking throughout the night. Maybe one more day. Maybe tomorrow I'll be 99%, hopefully. What day is it? It's Friday, October 24th. Holy shit. Friday, October 24th. Have a little bit of a pause in our storm. Power got back on last night. It's kind of funny last night. Get this one. So the power's out. We're going to go into town and find something to eat. So we're driving down our little dirt road, and there's the power crew. The hydro crew is there. So we left, ate, came home. They're completely gone. We're like, I don't think any power's on. And I was joking. I go, imagine if it's like, oh, we forgot a part of the shop. We got to go get it. Or we're waiting for a part from Amazon. And they left us with no power. And that was the joking I was saying on the way home from getting some food. Sure enough, the crew was gone and the power wasn't restored. I don't know what happened. I guess another tree fell down up in that direction somewhere, and they're working on it. I think the power came on at 1 in the morning or 1:30 or something. Anyway, there you go. What else? Woke up today to the clown show in Ottawa. Announced, no, first I think Trump announced that all trade negotiations, anything to do with trade between the U.S. and Canada is now done. And I'm like, right on, Canada stand. And then apparently the clown that the Brits put in place of being called Prime Minister here in Canada stand, I guess he announced today that all relations with the United States will never be the same ever again. Holy shit. Good job. Isn't that great? What a bunch of morons. What a bunch of morons here in this Canada stan, the country of Canada stan. Anyway, unfortunate. Hope it doesn't prevent me from coming down south to see all of my great friends in the near future. Will that suck? Because of all these idiots? Anyway, I won't even get going on that because I want to focus on hearing from the people. I can't wait to get back in the woods myself. I cannot frickin' wait. This time of year, having me indoors is very, very challenging. This is very challenging for me to be inside, I'll tell you what. Now, mixed it up again today. We've got older ones, and we've got new out of the pan. This one's new out of the pan. Sent to us through me. This is titled, He Peeked Out of the Creek at Me. Ooh. Hello, Steve. My name is Hunter Lambert. You can share my name as I don't mind. Right on, brother. I love the bravery. Before I get started, on behalf of myself and everyone else, I wanted to say thank you for the consistency of these videos. Everyone that watches can tell you're a busy man, and we appreciate your hard work ethic. Appreciate the kind words, my man. It's too easy. I'm 28. I've lived in the northeast Arkansas my whole life. My grandpa bought 100 plus acres around Watershed Lake in the early 70s, and we've owned it ever since. I started hunting early in my life, around 4 or 5. I've always been a laid-back person who loves wildlife, and I believe you should respect all living things. I have more stories from my younger years that I will share. But for now, I'm going to share what happened to me in 2023. I don't want to take up too much of your time on whichever episode this airs on and not get someone else's story heard also. So here it is. It's all good, man. We're here for you. Let it rip. If I have to read an hour and a half, I'll do it. It was November of 2023. It was modern gun season. So I had my trusty old Remington 870 with me. I got one of those. I had hunted the day prior and had not seen anything. And I was hunting the backside of our property where there are 2 ridges that create a natural funnel with a creek that runs between them. I've always had a great luck catching cruising bucks running along this creek. Anyways, I'd walked in around 4:30 a.m. so I could walk in slow and not spook anything upon walking in. Using the same trail as the day before, there was a very old 3-point antler that had been chewed up badly by squirrels over the years, laying right in the middle of the trail. I just found it odd out of all places, and it was in the very center of a four-wheel trail, almost like someone had left it for me. I put the antler in my bag and continued on to my spot. I got to my spot and chose a large white oak that was wider than me to sit against, about 50 yards from the creek. I know you like hearing about what kind of timber is in the area, and this area is mostly mature white oaks with your occasional pine mixed in. Anyways, the sun was peeking over the ridge in front of me, and the woods were waking up at this point. And all of a sudden, from what I could hear, about 100 yards down to the right side of me, down the creek, I could hear crashing and running. But I couldn't see anything because of the dense woods. So, while I had the chance, I put my right knee up and sat my gun on it, shouldered my gun, and got ready as I figured it was a buck chasing does down the creek. And about 10 minutes later, 2 does came running in, but no buck. There's a game trail they use about 20 feet off of the creek, in which the does were on, and they were exhausted. Weirdly, one cuts off the trail and comes right to me, stops at my feet and stands there and listens, while the other veers off the trail and is about 20 feet past me also. So I'm sitting there trying not to move a muscle so I don't get busted, when I hear something splash in the creek. It got all of our attention. The 2 does looked in the direction immediately, and mind you, this doe is still almost standing on my left foot. My head is still kind of cocked right because I was expecting a buck to come making its way down the same trail the does came from. So while they were looking in the opposite direction of me at the creek where the splash came from, I slowly start turning my head left and see something rising up from the creek. It's moving pretty much the same speed as I'm turning my head. Very slow. That would be creepy. As I get my head straightened up looking at the creek, I can immediately tell this is not a deer. It's a dark brown color, but where the sun was hitting it, it had a red hue to it. It looked like I was staring at a huge forehead. When it slowly started coming up more, it exposed its whole face and tops of shoulders. At this point, I knew exactly what I was looking at. It was a Bigfoot head, face bare, human-like features, dark eyes, looked like it was about 4 feet wide, shoulder to shoulder. When it first peeked out of the creek, it was focused on the deer right in front of me, but then slowly looked at me. At this point, I had a huge adrenaline rush come over me. No doubt. I felt as if I was looking at something I should never have seen. I'm not one to easily get scared, but I was honestly terrified. I slowly pointed my gun right at its head. It stared at the end of my barrel, then looked me right in the eyes. And when we locked eyes, a feeling almost like sadness and regret came over me. I know I felt regret because I couldn't shoot something this human-like, especially if it wasn't going to harm me. But the sadness felt almost as if it was the Bigfoot's feeling. I know it sounds dumb, but I felt like I could feel what it felt. It was almost like I was pointing it at a buddy. That's when I had weird pictures come up in my head of him avoiding me, hiding behind trees and staying out of my way when I would be hunting out there. It was like he was showing me he's peaceful and stays out of my way. So I slowly lowered my gun away from him. As soon as the gun had been lowered, the feeling of regret and sadness I had disappeared, almost like he was thanking me for not shooting. That's amazing. He slowly lowered his head back into the creek, and the deer ran directly behind me. I sat there for another 2 hours, not knowing whether to stay still or get out of there. Finally, I got up and slowly made my way to the creek where he had been. I could see footprints, but it was a sandy bottom creek, so it wasn't very, very accurate. But you could tell it had huge feet. Also, this creek this creek wall he was standing behind went straight down at a 90-degree angle and was, I'd say, 7 to 8 feet tall. So this Bigfoot had to be well over 8 feet tall. And I got out of there after that. And that night I couldn't decide if I wanted to go back out there ever again after that experience. But something in me told me it didn't have malicious intentions. So I decided I'd go back the next morning. Wow, that's crazy. Good for you, man. What an incredible frickin' experience this is so far. So I decided to go back the next morning. Hunting is my passion, and I'm not going to let anything keep it from me what I love. I went to the exact same spot the next morning, which I did have a weird feeling like something was watching me on my way in to my spot, but I pushed forward. And 30 minutes after the sun came up, I took my biggest buck to date right where all that happened the day previously. I'm glad I faced my fears and got back in there and hunted. I've never experienced him again out there since, but I do have some stories from when I was younger I'm going to send in. I watch all your videos. Steve, if you have any questions about this story, please ask and I'll send the answers in to you in my next email. Again, I appreciate you and stay safe out there, brother. Holy shit, I appreciate you too, man. You know what? If you want, email me and let me know if you want to come on here with me, and we'll talk about everything right here on video. You don't have to write nothing. And share with everybody at the same time. Let me know. Hunter, I got a lot of questions, but that's a very, very, very interesting experience. And it does fit patterns that I've taken note of. I've had a few people now have reported in feeling the feelings these beings have. Like that, remember that one dude years back said he looked at that thing and he said it looked old and tired and lonely or something. Old and tired and lonely. Felt a distinct feeling of old, tired, and lonely. Amazing, isn't it? And maybe that's where the sadness comes in, like, realizing it just finally saw you, who it may have seen who knows how many times, and maybe possibly hoping it could be friends, maybe in a way, I don't know. And all of a sudden you see the gun pointing at its own face, and it's thinking, oh shit, this sucks. I don't know, who knows? But anyway, I'm sure you're here listening to me read your experience, so email me back and let me know if you want to come on here, and we'll talk about hunting and your experiences on here together. If you want, or not, let me know. All right? That's amazing. Amazing. I got a lot of questions. A lot, like, who did you tell? Who'd you share with? What'd they say? Do you know anybody else that's seen the same thing around there? You know what I mean? All sorts of questions. Now, my nose. I'm making nose. I'm red right here and red right here. Sarah, you're going to laugh at this. Just before it came out, Sarah's like, come on, let's do your nose waxing. You guys ever tried that? If you haven't, you should. It feels great afterwards, but oh my god. So she gets these little tiny wax bead things, puts them in a paper cup, puts them in the nuker, and then she gets these little other things. You dip it in, then you go right in your nose, these two sticks, and you let it harden, and then you got to rip it out. I thought my nose was going to tear off of my face. So, if my nose is red and it's red right there, that's why. I know it sounds funny, but you got to give it a go, right? Give it a go. Trust me. Way better. Anyway, what do we have here? This is real long. I don't care. I'm going in. Right. I just messed with the microphone. I think it was a little loud in the beginning, and I think I got it dialed now. Everything went upside down with the power getting shut off. Now this is titled My Encounter, California, 1995. I'd like to remain anonymous, please. I've kept this story pretty much to myself, with exception of a good friend who had an encounter in Connecticut about 15 years ago. I've feared the repercussions of divulging this story for well over 20 years, even after my discharge from active service. We were told the penalty would be without mercy, even as civilians, as it was considered sensitive classified information. August 1995, my Marine platoon was conducting our third counter-narcotic JTF operation in a pre-selected national forest in California, in a location I will keep secret. The past 2 summers yielded solid results with the identification and eventual eradication of several big-dollar marijuana grows in 2 different national forests. Federal law prohibits military acting as a police force. We were armed but not allowed to engage or make arrests. Our job was to covertly insert into pre-designated areas, chosen because of its remoteness and having prior activity, and from gathered intelligence of Mexican cartel informants who had knowledge of grow sites in and around this particular national forest. Our job was to find a water source and follow it, look for signs and locate any grow sites. Then we'd set up an observation post and gather intelligence and monitor activity until the state and local law enforcement made the bust. We were only allowed to use deadly force if our lives were physically threatened, and even then it would be a slippery slope. Even if they spotted us and confronted us, we were to hightail and run. Our involvement, or lack thereof, could make or break a prosecutor's case. We would insert wearing civilian clothes by means of rented vans and SUVs posing as hikers or campers. They'd pull over and we'd bail out hoping not to be spotted. We'd change into uniform, paint our faces, assemble our weapons and gear, and begin the patrol. We were in 4-man teams on 3-day patrols. Myself and my assistant team leader carried shotguns and 9mm. The 2 junior Marines carried M16 A2s. We had thermals, GPS, compass, map, and protractors. We had a radio and a sat phone. We carried water filtration pumps and fire tents because of the threat of forest fires that year. It was a very dry summer. We did not carry a lot of ammunition. Our goal was to not be seen or get out of Dodge as quick as possible. After finding the stream, which ended up being a trickle due to the drought, we pressed on. For about 2 hours, we walked in the stream bed. On each side, we were near vertical 50-foot walls. We navigated around an extremely wide curve in the stream. I was on point, and as I came around a giant boulder in the middle of the stream bed, I saw in front of me brown fur and large claws. I raised my weapon, which alerted the rest of the team. It was a bear, a dead bear, lying on its stomach with its head nearly ripped off, twisted, so it was facing up towards the sky. Its 4 limbs draped over the sides of flat elevated rock in the stream. Wow. It had large chunks of meat torn out along the sides of its spine. The gut pile and patches of loose fur were laying right next to it. It was a gruesome sight. I didn't understand what I was looking at. We took up defensive positions because my only thought was poachers or Mexican growers looking for fresh meat after spending several months tending and guarding a grow site. My assistant, a Native American from a Navajo tribe in New Mexico, was the first to spot 2 sets of gigantic bare-toed footprints in the damp sand all around the stream bed. We followed them to the edge of the western side of the stream, and they went straight up near the vertical wall to the top. Excuse me. A person would need climbing gear to achieve that ascent. No ropes, no gear, just disturbed dirt and rock from where they climbed straight up. We heard no one running, no one climbing, no rocks falling. Dead silence. A terrifying feeling of dread came over the team. My assistant looked very concerned, to make matters worse, and I asked him what the F was going on. He said, "This ain't good, boss." The footprints were enormous. One set was clearly bigger than the other. I said to my assistant, "Why are they barefoot?" I still didn't get it. He suggested we reroute and change direction. He said we were somewhere where we shouldn't be and were asking for trouble. He said they were wild men, and this is their kill and their land, and they're probably watching us as we speak. I looked dumbfounded and clueless, and he whispered in my ear so the 2 junior guys wouldn't hear and freak out, "Sasquatch." But he called them something else, and for the life of me I can't remember. It was something in his native tongue. I felt like something was watching us now. Or was it just my imagination? The air in the woods had changed. The woods got quiet. I heard no birds, no crickets, even the mosquitoes stopped biting. I had an area of operation to recon and a mission to accomplish. If I radioed in that we were altering our route and told them why, I would have been relieved of my responsibility and embarrassed in front of the entire platoon. I said, "We're moving out. Let's pick up the pace and get to our next checkpoint before 1600 hours." And as we moved to our next checkpoint, I remember smelling the overpowering smell of rotting garbage. It was intense. It seemed to be everywhere. It was pungent to the point it almost made me sick, then just went away as quick as it came. Things remained tense and uncertain, but when we discovered empty bags of fertilizer and several yards of gardening hose along the edge of the stream bed, it alerted us to the possibility of a grow site, and we soon forgot about all the weird shit that just happened. We followed the hose from the stream onto the game trail and into a clearing. And about 200 yards off the stream was when we first smelled the unmistakable skunky aroma of marijuana. We could see bits of fluorescent material through the trees, which we assumed was a tent. So, we had a grow site. We did an area reconnaissance, 360 degrees, and we found an ideal overwatch position on an elevated plateau about 75 yards from the growers' camp. We also spotted the pot field. I estimate at least 300 to 500 plants. We radioed everything in and set up our listening and observation post. And the crazy thing was, there were no growers, and we heard not a sound. And from the appearance of the camp, it seemed unusually unkept, almost abandoned. Something didn't add up. Did they spot us? Did they make a run for it? Even though these sites were cartel-owned, they were usually operated by poor farmers smuggled into the woods with minimal supplies, tasked with living the entire grow season in the woods until harvest. After examining the camp and tying up some loose ends, we kind of determined it had been abandoned for some time. But we had to assume they'd be back, or were in the area still. Around midnight, I completed my 2-hour security shift and I fell asleep almost immediately. And while sleeping, I remember hearing my guys speaking nervously, scared and confused, arguing and contemplating. I thought it was a dream, but in reality, they had a situation unfolding. Less than an hour after falling asleep, I awoke to a blood-curdling scream that punched me right in the gut. I awoke to 3 panicked Marines with the most terrified expressions I've ever seen on grown men. I asked my most pissed-off, half-asleep, angry voice, who the F screamed? I thought our cover was blown and the operation was a wash. Their mouths hung open without a single word muttered. I heard the scream again. I never heard anything like this. It was deep and guttural. It went through you like a sonic boom. It was like a woman screaming, but deeper and louder. I smelled garbage. Like we were laying in it. My assistant said 12 o'clock movement, and it's big. I got my weapon, grabbed the night vision, and after fumbling around with these now dinosaur-age goggles, ANPVS 5s, I managed to get them turned on, and I put them to my face. I only had to scan for a couple of seconds, and I had a heat source almost immediately. And it was huge. And I mean huge. I thought bear, but when it walked from behind the tree, then crouched down real stealthy, then down to all fours behind the growers' tents, I knew it was no bear. It kept raising up, peeking from behind the 2 tents. The growers' tents were set up side by side. It obviously didn't account for us having night vision, and it stood up straight. There's no moon, and it was pitch black out, and I could see it fully. But with no ambient moonlight, the night vision was probably functioning at around 70% visibility. And I estimate this thing at 10 feet, maybe 5 feet across. Long, lanky arms and no neck. I can still remember how long its arms were in relation to its body. It was not proportional at all. It started growling, and it still didn't sink in what I was looking at. The growling was deep and continuous, I yelled at it. Of all things, I yelled at it. And it immediately squatted back behind the tents like it was thinking to itself, oh shit, they see me. And just then, like an explosion, it came crashing through the tents, charging straight at us. Whoa. The other 3 Marines were fumbling around the dark for their flashlights. We were still grouped, but everyone was looking for gear and weapons. I refocused their attention. Direct front is coming, make ready. I chambered a shell, and I remember the distinct sound of an M16 charging handle to the left of me sliding home. At least we had 2 weapons on it. And I dropped the night vision. I did not strap them to my face. Instead, I held them there, but as I drew my weapon, I let them go. I told my assistant to grab the night vision down by my knees, somewhere. The only way we could see this freight train coming at us was because as it crashed through the tents, one of the tents got hung up on it, and it was being carried around with it as it charged. It charged maybe 25 to 30 yards before it made a hard left and straight into a tree line. Oh my God. As it entered the tree line, a tree must have snared the hijacked tent, and the tent was now hung up in a tree about 8 feet off the ground. It didn't go far into the woods. Then, crashing and snapping, lasted about 3 seconds and stopped. It was still close. Then it started growling again, and its volume would go up and down. Panic was hitting all of us hard. Between the cries of, holy shit, what the F, and shoot it, I was starting to worry about one of my guys discharging his weapon and shooting one of us accidentally. I called out for names and where their positions were in relation to mine. It was so dark and shit was so confusing, but I wanted all of us elbow to elbow and accounted for. And weapons pointed in a safe direction, and not at the back of my head. This creature started making a different noise now, like a chattering Chinese-type language, followed by an occasional whoop. Then about a 20-second growl. Back to the weird chattering shit. It was so odd, terrifying, and unreal all the same time. I was trying to keep my shit together. I didn't have time to process. I wanted to gain accountability and control and make sure I was making good decisions. Even with a monster 50 yards to my 3 o'clock, I still worried about consequence brought forth by my command for effing up or making a bad decision. We heard a large crack, followed by a second and a third crack. Then the unmistakable sound of a tree falling. It had dropped a huge tree with ease. It crashed down with a thud. The tree had fallen into the camp area about 50 yards from us. I asked the radio so I could inform command of the situation. One of my Marines was fumbling around trying to locate the radio. My eyes were glued to the area from where the tree had fallen. I couldn't even blink. I was absolutely terrified. Again, I asked for the radio. We had 2 weapons on the thing to our 3 o'clock. My assistant was scanning with the night vision, and the 4th Marine was now trying to reach someone on the radio. The last radio check was at 2200 hours. We were doing 4-hour comm checks. He managed to get someone on the radio, but the signal was garbled. He kept repeating, "There's something attacking us. We need help." They asked to speak with LT, actual me. I stuck out my left hand, grabbing the radio, and informed command we had unknown hostiles probing our observation post. I didn't know what else to say. They asked about numbers and weapons and visual identification, and I told them unknown, but we need the rapid response team and an emergency evac immediately. And just then a scream came from our 6 o'clock. A similar scream as the first, but this one was closer. We had abandoned our situation awareness and forgot about covering our 6. We couldn't see the second one, nor could we hear anything other than the initial scream. Then, one at our 3 o'clock started moving, barreling over the trees as it rounded our position, making its way to our 6 from where the second scream came from. I turned on my mag light that was attached to the barrel of my shotgun and followed this thing as it ran on all fours like a chimpanzee. It moved with such speed and agility and just plowed everything in its way to the ground. For the first time I saw it, it looked brownish red. It was immense. It had huge, thick legs and massive shoulders. You could hear the impacts on the ground every time it advanced. The speed was incomprehensible. It got from point A to point B in less than 10 seconds. It was now 50 yards to our 6 o'clock behind a group of large fir trees. We could hear it breathing. Massive lungs and a massive chest. "Can we shoot, Sergeant?" one of my Marines asked. I said, "No, hold your fire. Lieutenant wants you on the radio." But I couldn't move. It began chattering again, and the response seemed to come from the same area it had taken up, but the tone was different. I raised my shotgun with my mag light still on and made eye contact with this monster peering up from behind a fir tree. It snarled at me and began growling. Its hair had twigs and leaves in it. It had patches of bare skin like it had mange. It had no neck and huge black eyes. Its jaw muscles on each side of its face were huge. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen. And as it started growling, a different growl joined in. I raised the shotgun higher and followed the center fir tree up towards the top, and there it was, the second one. It had climbed this fir tree and was about 75 feet in the air. It managed to get behind us and climb a tree without a sound. I apologize for the length of this story. I just wanted to include as much detail as possible and to be as accurate as possible. All military discipline had gone out the window. We all had flashlights turned on and we were yelling at each other and at these beings. One of my Marines was yelling, "Get out of here, go, get!" Another kept saying, "What the F, what the F?" I ordered everyone to gather their gear, get on their backpacks, and we backed up into the main campsite area, trying to put a little more distance between us and these things. I ordered to gather as much wood as possible. There was a lot laying around from the fallen tree. The tree this animal fell was dead and broke into hundreds of pieces that were strewn about. I started a campfire, which is probably a terrible idea given the fire conditions that summer. And it's the last thing Marines would do while on a real-life nighttime operation. But this was no ordinary mission. It was just so dark, and I was hoping the extra light and the sight of a fire would sway these things from advancing any further. I truly feel they were gauging us, looking for a weakness or an opening. The large one stayed put as the second one would pace out to its left and right. Its head kept jerking around like it was viewing us from multiple angles. It was terrifying how it jerked its head around, never taking its eyes off of us. It came down from the tree in less than 2 seconds. It was faster than a chipmunk and 100 times the size. At this time, help was about 2 hours away. They were going to meet us about a mile north on an old forestry road that we found on the map. When they were 1 hour out, that's when we would make our move and head north to meet up with my unit. It was fairly even terrain and no major obstacles. Back and forth communication with my unit command only created more confusion for everyone not involved. If I were them, I'd be thinking the same thing. These guys are crazy. When we made our move out of the campsite, we heard them follow. We left the fire going, and despite my nightmare situation, I remember thinking to myself, I hope I don't start a forest fire. But the lingering firelight gave us the courage to venture into the dark woods. My assistant was an ace at land navigation, and I took up the rear with the night vision, now properly strapped to my face. I thought about a warning shot or two, but even that would exact a severe penalty. Discharging live rounds in a national forest without a legitimate reason, even though we had a reason, would have landed me in an NJP. I had weapons, but I might as well have been unarmed. Using them would have gotten us in trouble, and would have only angered these beings, because anything short of a .50 caliber round would only piss these things off. They were that big. They didn't harass us as much on our trek out, and I figured it would have been prime opportunity for them to make a move. But they kept their distance, but were still close. The pungent smell of rotting trash still hung in the air, and at one point one of them advanced out in front to our left flank, but held its position as we passed. As we met up with the response team, they were still close. My platoon sergeant was angry and full of questions, but as these beings made their presence known, he relented. In a way, I was glad these things followed us, because I highly doubt they would have believed us. Who would? They arrived in 2 SUVs and an 8-passenger van. And as these things screamed and broke limbs, my platoon sergeant acted unusually calm. He accounted for everyone and all their equipment and weapons. He would occasionally look in their direction, but made no inquiries about what these things were. He was a very calm and cool combat veteran and wanted to get good accountability of personnel and equipment, and ask questions later. The response team members set up a perimeter, and I could hear them asking amongst themselves, "What the hell are we looking at?" Even during a Bigfoot encounter, we were professionals, and it was done by the book. Several Marines kept their weapons at the ready, round in the chamber, but I had unloaded and made mine safe, along with the rest of my team. I made sure all my guys got into the van before I entered. The platoon sergeant rounded up the response team, and they began to load up into the SUVs. And I finally heard the platoon sergeant ask another sergeant, "What the F is going on?" And as we drove out into one of the blackest, darkest nights I'd ever seen, and all of a sudden, a huge rock smashed through the front windshield of the lead SUV. The driver cut the wheel hard left, and they ended up rolling over down a small hill, and the vehicle ended up on its side. Again, every Marine present exited the vehicles and set up a defensive perimeter around the downed SUV. One Marine received a broken collarbone and a minor concussion. And now shit was real. At this point, the sheriffs and the forestry departments were en route to our location. National Guard Blackhawks were on standby for the entire month of operations, and they dispatched one chopper to provide aerial security. We were to remain in place, maintain 100% security, and wait for daylight. But by 7 a.m., the cavalry had arrived, and we were finally on our way out of the forest. We were ordered to never talk about this incident ever, even amongst ourselves. The terrified looks on some of the guys' faces are still burned into my memory. The sounds and smells I experienced that night, along with the terrifying looks of these beings, I will never forget. I'm still scared to go into the woods alone, and I still have nightmares. We had a reunion back in 2010, and for the first time while sitting in a hotel bar in Florida, we talked about what we saw, and how it still carries with us to this day. These things are real. And I know there's things I'm missing, details I forgot to add. It was a long time ago. But these beings are not gentle giants of the forest. They are territorial, they are aggressive, and they don't like people, period. People that intentionally look for these things are insane. Leave them alone. And if you come across them, run the other way. Thank you for your time. Well, if that isn't a holy shit email, right? Oh, that's a lot of people involved in that encounter. And I wonder how many people that were directly involved in that exact experience are watching this channel and listening and shit and going, holy shit, that was me, that was us. And if it is, why don't you write into us? I want to hear from every one of you, if you can. But it's definitely a strong pattern. We've had a lot of ex-military people write in and say flat out they were intimidated to keep their mouth shut no matter what. I've had other guys say they had to sign NDEs, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, it's quite the experience, man. Quite the experience. I sure would love to hear from more people that are involved in these multiple witness experiences, wouldn't you? Don't forget about George, our friend George, and his buddy that we put together through here. Angola, right? Wasn't Angola in the swamps in Angola when those bad guys you guys were chasing were getting annihilated by something and they came looking for you guys to save them? We We had two different people. I'm just saying, we had two different people from the same terrifying experience found each other on this channel from listening to one guy tell their story. Let's see if it happens again. It's pretty scary, isn't it? Wow. Okay, one more. We're here for one more person. This is titled My Family Encounter. Hello, Steve. My name is David Hayes, and I'm a 54-year-old husband, father, and grandfather who also served in the Navy straight out of high school. After which, for several years, I had many carpentry-type jobs until finally getting a job working for a major factory as a production supervisor for over 20 years. I had 2 strokes in the last 2 years. My working days were finished. Sucks to hear that, man. I have nothing to lose now, and while not as in your face as a lot of encounters, mine was one I'll never forget. Enough of me. I want to thank you for what you're doing, and for those out there who have no place to go to tell their story. This is very important. People need to tell someone to help start the process of getting over the experience. To keep it to yourself will not aid in recovering. While I haven't had the unfortunate experience of actually seeing one of these freaking things, I have had multiple experiences. In the woods, I have had multiple experiences in the woods that have no explanation. The worst of which I'm going to relate to you and your viewers now. I'm hoping it helps someone with a similar situation to understand and hopefully get over their own experiences. This all took place on one of the longest mountain ridges here in central PA. There's a mountain ridge called the Bald Eagle Ridge that runs southwest to northeast and runs for about 60 miles. It's the last mountain ridge before hitting the Appalachian Plateau to the west. It's a very beautiful part of the country and the state. In these mountains, there are very few homes. Most of the population of this state lives in the valleys and not in the mountaintops, so they are pretty secluded. And about 10 years ago, my wife and I, along with 25-ish-year-old son and our 2 grandchildren, and one of their friends, all the children were between 8 and 10 years old, all went for a walk at the reservoir. This supplies all the drinking water for this area, central PA, USA. This reservoir is set back about a mile from the main road, RT 150, and is now an area for walking and hiking. But back then it wasn't used by many people at all. It was formed from damming the creek that runs down through this valley. The small lake that was formed is beautiful and is abundant with fish and surrounded with the usual wildlife. But most of all, it's secluded. And let me first say that until having 2 strokes in the last 2 years, I was an avid hunter and fisherman. I taught my children and grandchildren how to get out and enjoy what nature we have. So, with that being said, I and my son was armed, as we always are, to protect us from any animals that may not have the best intentions. We started out a little later than planned, but things were going great and so far uneventful. We walked about a mile or 2 up into the mountain and was on our way back about 3/4 of a mile from the truck, and by this time it was about 9 p.m. and dark. Everyone had a flashlight. We always take them for reasons like this. And we were here before, at the same time, with nothing to be concerned about. So it was business as usual, and we were all carrying on and enjoying the outdoors and the walk. And I want to make clear now that I got a very uneasy-like feeling for no reason. I wish to explain it, but I can't. I know it doesn't make sense, but I just had a very weird feeling. Then I heard what sounded like heavy footsteps, faintly, but I could hear them over the sounds my family were making in front of me, on the trail. It sounded like something big, walking above us, straddling the side hill to our left. It's a very steep side hill, and the trail we were on was cut into it for humans to walk on. My son was in the lead, followed by the 3 children, my wife, and then myself bringing up the rear. My son stopped, which stopped the rest of us, and he said, "Listen, Dad, do you hear that?" I was already listening hard, and again I could hear what sounded like someone walking to our left on the steep mountainside of the trail. I'm not going to lie, it startled me. But after gathering my senses, I shrugged it off as a deer or some other animal and told my son to keep moving. But him, myself, and the rest of the group were now focused on what was following us in the upper side of the trail. We were all moving forward and were not panicked, but focused. And just then I heard what sounded like a very large branch being broken from a tree. My son and the rest of the family also heard it. Then it sounded like a tree or a large boulder was thrown, and it was loud, very loud. I've heard trees falling over from wind in the woods while hunting, and that's not what this noise was. There was no wind that night. It was very still, and the woods were silent. Up until this point. We then heard what sounded like a very heavy person running. This was all happening about 20 or so yards up the steep hill to our left. At this point, I calmly said to my son, who was now shining his light on the mountainside, trying to find what had made that noise, "Start moving." We all started to walk fast to get back to the truck. All the flashlights were focused on that side hill, but we could see nothing but trees, and the rest of the walk was uneventful. The whole way back to the vehicle, everyone was on end, and our senses were all on high alert. I don't know what made that noise that night, but I know what it wasn't. I've been in the woods long enough to know what the sounds are, and what we all heard that night was a deliberate made noise. If I had to make a guess, I would say something ripped a tree from the ground and threw it. That's what it sounded like to me. The rest of the way back to the truck was uneventful. We saw no eye shine and heard nothing else the rest of the way back to the place that we parked the truck. We no longer walk there after dark, and even in the daytime we're on high alert. There are many people who walk there now since they turned it into a public walk and mountain bike area, and we have had no other incidents while walking there. You can give my name. I don't care what people think of me. I'm at the age now where I don't care. I know what I heard and felt that night, and my whole family still talks about it. I'm in the minority in that I was not alone when this happened, and my family still brings it up and talks about it to this day. Thank you, Steve, for giving people an outlet to share their encounters. I'm sure this will help a lot of people. It doesn't really bother me. I'm always on my guard whenever in these areas. End of email. Straight to the point. Matter of fact. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you big time. Especially appreciate you be concerning about helping other people, right? That's goal number one here. Helping each other. Goal number one. Kind of neck and neck with goal number one of exposing the lying bastards, right? Who put everybody in this position. Well, they didn't put us in this position. It's just that massive, massive effort to keep all this suppressed and never acknowledged. Kind of like 9/11, right? In a way. Kind of like a lot of stuff that's going on in our faces throughout our lifetimes. It's amazing. The effort is amazing. That insatiable thirst for power is unbelievable as you look into it and watch what's going on. But anyway, I'm sure you did help a lot of people sharing that experience. I'm super glad you did, man. Appreciative. And I'm just getting a text now from the big boss. I got to get my butt in for dinner. I'm a little late today. It's starting to pour rain again. Man, I was gonna go. I sure hope I have one creek bed. Not that big of a creek, but you can tell water really rips through there. And I don't know, it's been a lot. The river down the road is absolutely flooding. But I left 3 trail cameras along that river spread out over quite a distance. Hikeable one day easy, but man, I hope they didn't wash away. Because one of the trees was a huge, huge cottonwood with the root ball attached and fell over from the bank. And I attached the camera to the root ball on the end, and I hope the water didn't get it. But anyways, I'm babbling away. I gotta get ripping. I hope everybody's gonna do something they love this weekend, and take somebody with you. And if you can, try not to take the bait in being angry and fighting with your neighbor. All right? I know it's hard. It's hard, but once you see through the dust, it's intentional. There's a lot of intent in trying to make you mad at your neighbor. right now, and a lot of people are taking the bait, and it's exactly what these evil sons of bitches need. So just try not to take the bait. I'm trying not to take the bait. Try not to take the bait. Try to go the opposite. Try to help each other, right? Oh, one of our moms with 2 little boys who's living in a frickin' garage that you all fed. Sarah just said that she's reaching out for somebody to help her. She actually can move into, she got into low income housing somewhere. How exciting is that for her, and especially those 2 little children? So I told Sarah that we would get right to it and go help her move and fill up those cupboards in her refrigerator with food. She even said she asked if anybody could help her, that she didn't have any money for anything, but she said she'd had enough to at least buy them a hot coffee if they'd help her. The help's on the way. We are on the way to go help. Can't wait. It's going to be fun. Well, be fun for Sarah. She's into that shit, but just so you guys know, we are helping again. Well, we don't stop helping, but I mentioned her before. And it's just great to see that one particular mom was in such a helpless, nowhere to go, what to do state. And Sarah's been coaching her along the way. You guys fed her and those children. And now it sounds like things are getting a little bit better for her and those kids. So anyways, I got no problems in throwing down a whole shit pile of healthy food for her and those little kids to help them get on a good start in their new home. How exciting is that? That just drove me freaking crazy because I drove by that house a few times, and Sarah said just not too long ago that I don't know if she read a post from the girl or she got a text or something saying how it was getting really, really cold down there. Just making me sick. You know what I mean? It's like, how can somebody even offer up a space in their home as something to live in for a single mom who's desperate, 2 beautiful young children, and have a garage, 2 plywood garage doors down underneath, and that's their doorway to their home? And then I hear it's not warm? Some people are just, I swear they gotta be reptiles. They gotta be cold-blooded reptiles. How do you do that one? Anyways, they're out of there. I'm sorry I'm rambling. They're out of there. We're gonna feed them. Thank you all for helping. We are all gonna go feed them. And don't forget the kind words from the kind man who just emailed us in. He emailed in to help people get through with what the hell they saw and didn't ask to see, right? Keep that in mind. All you sitting on the fence out there thinking, I'm not going to share my story. I don't need to share it. Everybody else has. Bullshit. We need you to share your shit. All right? Just share it. Share my story at howtohunt.com. And I should be back tomorrow. Later. We got a quick interruption. We've got a visitor coming in the door here for Halloween. Check it out. Check out our visitor. What are you doing? Ruby! She's a spider. She's a spider. Bubs. What? Seriously? Look at you. Oh my god. You think somebody needs to have another baby or something? Or 2 or 3? Bubs! Ruby! Rubes! What are you doing? Is this doggy trick or treat? Alright. How did you she get angry when you put it on or anything? Oh god. Alright. Okay, thanks for the visit. What are you putting on Griffin?
He's got an acid wash ball cap and denim jacket.
What?